So yes, we really want to invite you here with the Educational Educators portion and conversation today of FI Connects to ask questions. It's inquiry-based learning, right? And that requires some risk-taking. So we are going to do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We may not get to all questions asked, but we're going to try our best. And we do want to stress that sharing all ideas is okay. We really encourage that. This is really a safe place for us to do all of that. So here we go. So last time we were together, we talked about these three basic things. One, that we need to really be realistic and consider not only our own needs, but the needs of our students. So being strategic about the resources that we're using to support our kids and our lessons, really being conscientious not to start using a whole bunch of new stuff if we don't have to, and making those decisions that really just support you and your students during this time. We also talked about to keep fostering those relationships and building empathy. Students really want to hear you and see you. We encouraged you to maybe consider making some videos, and we're going to talk about more of that in our discussion as well. And having some office hours so students and parents know when they can contact you and you're not constantly checking your computer or your phone for a message or something like that. And lastly, we did talk briefly about how do we offer feedback, making sure that it's encouraging and small in scale. So with that being said, and with so much happening lately, we have another poll for you. I'm going to drop that into the chat window. And when I have a couple people who have asked me about my lovely background. So while you click on that, let me make that for everyone. While you click on this link to the question that I have for you, how are you feeling in week number 2? A lot has changed. Go ahead and click on that Menti link and take our poll. And to answer the questions for those of you who are like, how did you get that beautiful, beachy, lovely background behind you? I'm using a virtual background because my house is kind of messy right now. And you can find that under your video icon. If you click on the little arrow next to it and it says virtual backgrounds, and you can add your own. So we see when I ask, how are people feeling this week? We have quite a few people who are, hanging in there. A few people who feel like, I've had my pie in the face moments as well. And I'm sorry to see we've got some people who are like not feeling so good. I know we started our time last week. We were really thinking about this was only going to be a few weeks, and now it's a little bit different. But I do want to encourage us, how are we celebrating small victories at this time? Because honestly, if you think about it, you have changed really the face of education in less than a week. So I think that's worth celebrating. And go ahead and drop in the chat and how you are, something you want to celebrate, even if it's a small thing. Awesome, using Zoom for the first time. That definitely is something to celebrate because it is very new. We like Zoom at the Friday Institute because it is free and it offers the ability to have breakout rooms. You can create smaller groups out of a large group. Kids have gotten really excited about videos that you're making. Got your classroom set up at home. That's awesome. See trying different tools, different things. Awesome. Terry gets to be a stay-at-home grandma while she's teaching online. That's going to be awesome, Terry. So one of the things that we do want to share with you, and I'm going to set it up, and Laura's going to help me facilitate this. We want to do something a little silly, but we thought that you would appreciate it because it's something that you can do with your kids. So let me grab. How many of you have heard of Code.org's dance party?
Super fun.
So here we go. I can't see you all there at home with all my different screens open, but we're going to go ahead, stretch a little bit, and start with a high clap. Stretch it out a little bit. You can do a little bit of dab. Sometimes our kids need a dance break, and sometimes we do too. So this is created by Code.org. I see some people, they have heard of it and their kids love it. We have 2 separate links to share with you, and Laura, if you can drop those into the chat, that would be awesome.
Sure.
In the classroom, you can turn on some music, you have your students get up, get the wiggles out, and just have a moment to have a dance break. But in your virtual situation, why not? You can still do it. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. But we also have a Spotify playlist to share with you as well that comes from Code.org that goes wonderfully along with that. So Laura has just dropped the slides into use with the dance party and the playlist. And if you want to get adventurous, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, I was just going to say that, yes, that's a forced copy of the slides. So how it's set up, you can, it'll be yours now. So you can duplicate the slides, you can add more slides, you can set them to auto advance, you can manually advance them. The ones that we have in there are just a sample. And like Jackie said, Code.org made the avatars and the motions. But you can go on Code.org, and during Computer Science Week, and I assume at all times, the kids can create their own avatars. So those 4 were made by students. So the dab they might say the dab's a little outdated now. I guess we probably can do so whatever the next latest move is. So someone asked the steps to force a copy of a document. So is that if you have a document and you want somebody to force copy it, I'm guessing, is that the question?
Yep, I can actually demo it here. You can see the shared screen. On the recording, you're not going to see this, but on the upper right-hand corner, there's a share button, just like you would share any Google document in an email or something like that. And I'm going to select, can edit, and I'm going to grab this really, really long link. I'll copy that link and be done. So when I copy and paste that, I'll just drop this in my notes really quick. So this is the link, right? Super, super long, really, really messy. Anything after this / where it says edit USP equals sharing, I'm going to replace that with the word copy.
And I don't think that is right now.
Can you see that?
I cannot. I don't think we can see that.
All right, so what I'm going to do, can you see this?
Yes.
Awesome. So this actually said edit. This has a whole bunch of stuff after the link, right? So this is the link when I went to my share button, copied the link. If I replace everything after this / with the word copy, this is my new link that I can share, and it will force you a copy. So you can create templates, you can create presentations, things that you want to just share, but that now if you force a copy, I can't see it, right? I am not going to be able to check in and look at your work. But if I'm a teacher and I force a copy of a template of something I want my students to work on, I could have instructions that say, you're going to work on this template, fill in your answers, and then you're going to send it to me, say maybe a Google form where they have to share, they just have to go to share, and then they just send you that copy of their work. So you can make one document rather than 30 or more for students to work in, and then they may just have to share that back with you depending on how, their age and their skill. And I hope that was helpful. And I'm glad that you could see it. Any other shout outs or celebrations? Because really you need to give yourself a pat on the back. Can you believe all the things that you've done in the last few days? And you need to take that time, that moment to celebrate. Because we know this is kind of what we're dealing with now. So now what do we do? We may have thought, last week that maybe this was going to last just a couple weeks, and now it's gone to being more like a couple months. And our conversation today is really to support you in what do we do now. And we invite you, as we're talking, continue to ask questions and to let us know. And congratulations on the degree. That's awesome. Congratulations. So Laura and I really thought a lot about what do we want to talk to you about today. And we're going to talk about these lessons, but then how to really keep it simple and effective for you as you are navigating these new territory, new stuff. So the first thing we want to just kind of share with you about is time. This has been coming up a lot in conversations and things that we're seeing and discussing with teachers. And students really are going to be using the time differently, and so are you. The amount of time that it would take for instruction might be much shorter than you expect. And the time really allocated for students to demonstrate that understanding may be more. And I know, Laura, you had some advice from some homeschool teachers as well.
Yeah, I was reading something yesterday about when it was really going informative for parents, but I thought about it from the teacher side as we're creating these lessons. When we think about lesson design in our classroom and we say we're going to spend 45 minutes on a math lesson, that accounts for transition time, setup time, classroom interruptions, classroom management. So actual instruction time will tend to be less. So the insight from the homeschool teacher to the parents was, do not feel pressured to have the 7 hours of your day solid school instruction sitting at the kitchen table, because our 7-hour school day accounts for all sorts of things. So I thought about that if I'm planning a lesson where my typical 40-minute, 45-minute lesson may end up only being 30 minutes or so of actual instruction. And I thought that was really relevant for elementary teachers as well. I'm sure that may even be less than 30 minutes. And we found some really good research to back this up. That's a nice handy guide. And so Jackie, I don't know if you want to jump in with that, but I thought this was really, between that homeschool teacher's comments and then this, I'm like, oh yeah, I think people are really going to appreciate this.
This is a screenshot from a document, a PDF that I just dropped into the chat, and it comes from the Kansas Continuous Learning 2020. They did a frequently asked questions for their teachers at this time. And the second question was, how are students being held accountable for learning, and how much time should students be learning with each day? And on that document, it was very interesting to see how they broke it up by time. And this is the way that we read it. This is for weekly assignments, projects, video check-ins, the time that the students are on a device, And this is really just focusing on those critical standards in the content area. And this was their learning commitment, online each day, since many of you are doing a blend of those things. So pre-K, 30 minutes, K1, 45, grades 2 to 3 is 60, 4 to 5, 90, 6 to 12 is 30 minutes per teacher, and that's at a maximum of 3 hours. And I'm sure some of you are looking at this and you're just like, okay, wow, that doesn't feel like a lot of time, or you spend a lot more time with your kids. I see in here, create a modified generic schedule with pre-K students to follow, basically short snippets of high quality engagement. Yes, they're only allowed 20 minutes, and that's with a timer. So for your pre-K, that's awesome. It's a very different situation when they're at home, and we're hoping that we've got a couple of models to kind of help you manage that time. We're hoping that you're not surprised by these time limits, but we did want to share this resource with you, and it is actually really good practice and something to consider. So the first model we have to share with you, we have borrowed this from Kristen Zimke. She made this video on mini lessons on March 18th, and she put it up on YouTube, dropping a link to the original video that we have borrowed this awesome from. And she really highlights that lessons are going to be shorter because you're going to be breaking them into these smaller chunks. And the goal is to keep it simple, 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 simple. So in her video, she highlights what she calls her classic architecture for a mini lesson, where they're going to begin by getting an introduction from her about the lesson and the why of why they're learning it. And then she gives the students a few minutes of instruction. So it sounds a little bit, ideally, watch me, then I'm going to let you go and do it. Or she demonstrates and gives some content. And then that let you go do it activity engagement may look like her in her video. Okay, now pause the video and go and do this. And when you're done, hit play again. So there is that moment of engagement, where the student is now trying. And then finally, she links it back to the why of the learning and uses terminology like, so as you are working, remember, those kinds of things. So she does this in a video, and that's what helps her. But it can also be leveraged just as a model for your lessons in general. And we have a question, is that in addition to EC resource time for students who are pulled out of class and not in inclusion setting? I'm assuming the time allotments, or is that a question for Chandra perhaps? Sorry, Wendy, can you add to your question or pick up the mic?
Maybe referring back to the previous slide, I wonder.
So that's a good question. I don't know if there is an EC recommendation that's probably based on per student, and that's probably going to trump any of this. I would go with what if the student has an IEP or what that expectations are. These times are in general. These times are in general, and yes, I would go with. We were told 50% of the IEP, so I would go with whatever you're told, Wendy, for sure. If your district has come up with their own time allocation and expectation, that's where you have to start. And then if you hadn't heard about time allocation, that's why I wanted to share this with you today in supporting of your lesson planning.
The one thing, too, to point out, if you go back and watched Kristen's video, is that she does these mini lessons with nothing fancy. She has just computer paper, Post-it notes. She has some chart paper in the back. She's making anchor charts. So again, that whole keep it simple. You do not feel like you need to try a new tool and have your kids engaging virtually all the time. They like to see your face and hear your voice. They really care less about the fancy tool.
And she says in the videos that she creates, she's pretty much doing everything she would normally be doing in the classroom, except using terminology like pause, that come back, hit play, talking about how they would use their video. So she is asynchronously joining them. They get this video and a link that when they have time to sit and work with their parent or sit and do the lesson, they just play her video and the video guides them, and she encourages them in what she highlights as some active viewing guidelines, which we will talk about in our session as well. And then this is also just a lesson model that we came across thanks to Catherine Goyette on Twitter. And we modified it a little bit, simplified it a little bit, but ideally it starts with you. Whether this is in a video or written, it's like introduction, a hello, this is why we're doing this learning experience. So again, it can be in a virtual space like we are in right now, or maybe a pre-recorded video, like in Kristen's example. And that first step is vital for students because, as Laura said, they do benefit from seeing you, even if it's video recorded you. And your connection to them will really help support their connection to the content as well. And then from there, that's when that guided instruction happens. That content is going to be in the form of text, video, a simulation, maybe an audiobook, or a virtual field trip, or a reading resource, or what you provided them in the packet that went home, etc. But from that content, there should be some kind of collaborative opportunity. Maybe that's with a parent, or they are in a virtual space online with a fellow student, or with you, or what that looks like. And in the virtual spaces, maybe that's if you're using something. Last time we had a lot of folks to say they use Seesaw or Class Dojo, or I'm seeing the question: what type of virtual space can I offer students, and which tool is the simplest? I think that's the magic question. There's so many tools out there and so many things that you can use. It depends on your comfort level with technology, but then also the student and parents that will have to be engaging with the technology as well based on their age. So I think last time we had a lot of folks say they use some Seesaw. We really encourage educators, if you were using a virtual space or a tool, Google Classroom or something like that already, to continue doing so. But if you didn't have one, something as simple as a Google document where students can type in something if they're at that age, if they can type in comments, or a Padlet. I believe that is the address for a Padlet, where they can just kind of write little notes and engage with each other. Depending on the age of the child, though, and their typing skills, that it really varies and depends. I'm sure we've got lots of folks in the rooms that would probably can contribute to the question, kind of virtual spaces that you can use with your students. So feel free to drop some of those ideas in. But ultimately, we're looking for students to engage with that content in a collaborative way, if possible, and then have the opportunity to demonstrate their learning. But before that lesson wraps up, it connects back to you every single time. Whether that's some feedback, is time for the students to demonstrate their learning to you, and that feedback could be in maybe a picture of what they've done, a video that maybe the student makes, content they've added to a Google slide or a Google document, or posted on a Padlet maybe. And but ultimately, it all comes back to you in that feedback loop. So the idea is that connections really matter. The more that they can connect with you through that content is we find really does work. And again, we've modified this one from the image shared by Catherine Goyle on Twitter, and we have retweeted that on our FI Connects page if you're interested in that as well. So we've got lots of feedback and ideas happening in our chat, and ideas, and hopefully these aren't overwhelming. There's many different things out there. And we understand too that when you're trying to think of what to create and what you want to do, we really want to make sure that we scaffold. So I don't know if you have experience out there with single point rubrics. When we have shared this in the field, sometimes teachers haven't heard of them before. So this is an example of a single point rubric. And the idea is to really give your students some very clear expectations. It's really ideal for distance type learning situations because it's very simple and straightforward. And ultimately, you'll see, like on this example, the left-hand side is for concerns, notes on what needs improvement. The center is the criteria of what you consider proficient performance. And then that right-hand column is kind of the advanced, where the work has exceeded expectations and you can give kudos and highlight the good stuff that's happening. So when you make, we like this because it's very specific, immediate, and it is balanced. We think that, like for example, you could see on the slide that this example just focuses on 3 standards. And those standards are the criteria. They're written in very easy to understand language. And when this is given to the student and or the parent to kind of help them understand what they're learning and how they're learning it, it does help clarify some understanding as well. So we do say, like, set reminders for yourself to send out these encouraging messages that in that feedback loop when they come back to you. What are you looking at to kind of help facilitate the conversation? And we say, like, personalize that feedback as much as is realistic, and invite your students to share some feedback with you in that feedback loop. So are there any thoughts or questions about how you're structuring your lessons and anything that we can support or help you with? So we're thinking about our lessons and how we're structuring them. We know that we have a shorter amount of time. So what we would do in the classroom, we're not going to copy and paste that into a virtual setting or distance learning setting. So I'm interested in any questions, pushback, or needs that you may have around this. So feel free to drop some. Yes, I see in the chat. So quality is better than quantity. Amen. Absolutely. It's not about more stuff. It's just getting right to the ground. What are those standards? What do your kids need to know? What's really going to help them? And what's going to help you make sure that they can demonstrate their mastery? Ultimately, that's the goal, right? So really focus on what are those quality things that you want. And there's so much out there right now. It's overwhelming. We don't need to pile on more stuff. Good teaching is good teaching. This is just good teaching with a different lens. You're not standing at their side, but you are still there. just looks a little different. I see. I see the comment here. I'm really trying hard to consider the challenges each parent is having to navigate as they send out assignments and instructions. Thank you, Courtney. That's so true. I've seen a lot at least on social media, of parents going, "Oh my gosh, the teacher sent this home. How are we going to manage this and turn it in by Monday?" Some of it is a little overwhelming, and this is a new situation. So. And I see the question, are there any districts with time limits on the lessons provided to students? If so, are the time limits similar to the ones provided on the slide we viewed earlier? I haven't heard specifically if districts have time limits. We saw that document out of Kansas, so I'm curious if any other teachers out there have the time conversation within their districts. So we're seeing in our chat that, some of those time, and I'll pop that back up, the times for elementary students were probably pretty close. And then likewise, whoops, let me pop that screen back up.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Hey, hi.
It's Chandra.
Hi, how are you?
I just wanted to jump in real quick. So Wake County has been disseminating or distributing a lot of information. It is very overwhelming at times. Because I teach Title I pre-K, I'm kind of not in that same league or category with how the lessons and things need to be modified. But to fast forward and move on and get to the point, I think it is similar to what's on this slide from Kansas. I think that's what you said.
Yeah.
And what our principals have been saying.
We have orange cheese.
Somebody must have their.
We're working on that. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I wanted to give them time to mute. What the principals have been saying is that the key thing that they want teachers to remember is that you're not doing all day instruction. Basically what you guys have been saying, but more so to modify and make it more meaningful. So I wanted to just jump in and say that, but I think it is similar to what's on this screen right here. And we're going to be trying different facets of things to see how well the parents respond. And we're in the process now of trying to get laptops approved, and we're getting laptops to use. So we're just waiting for all that to come down the pipeline, but each email we get is so jam-packed with information. So it's hard to kind of sift and pick through that stuff that applies to me pre-K. But I have modified some stuff, me and my TA, to kind of send out to my parents. And what I've explained to her was that if we change anything, when we send things out to our parents, it'll be communicated before we actually send it out. I want to give my parents time to digest what I'm sending to them, and then kind of do a care call or follow up with the Remind app or a text and kind of see how that's going. Some parents may want the lesson to stay the same. Some may want things different. So the key is just trying to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think you hit the nail on the head. We want to plant some seeds for you guys and just be thinking about it. And we know maybe you were thinking about it, maybe it's not there yet. Because one of the things we've heard a lot, and we totally agree with, there has to be a lot of grace during this time. Like a grace period, grace and understanding. I'm seeing in the chat, like some people are waiting, a couple of weeks until that is kind of decided. So it's overall, I guess, just know to keep it simple, keep it focused, what you're putting out there. And that idea is that it's really to help you too, that you don't have to try to do it all. Do what's most pertinent and important. And I also saw in the chat, does it make sense to teach something new right now? Well, considering in North Carolina, they just announced that schools will not be back until May 15th, and that's pretty much the end of our school year here in North Carolina. So ultimately, there's going to be, your students will be moving on to the next grade level, perhaps, and will they have what they need to be successful there? So I think that's something maybe to keep in mind. What's going to be most helpful for your students now, and then for that beginning of the new school year? And it really is, it's got to make sense. So I see here too, yeah, they're asking in Wake County here in North Carolina not to teach anything new right now. So that's a great question to ask your particular school in your particular district. We're here, we're giving recommendations and ideas, but Laura and I in the Friday Institute, we don't trump anything that's coming from your leadership. So ultimately, this is a great time and opportunity to review some things. But again, we want to keep focused on that, the feedback and your connections with your students, how you're focusing those expectations, and really just giving them that feedback. I mean, your students are missing you. I know you guys are missing your students. And we just want to keep that support. And in this new-ish normal, how can students still see their education as something that they need to be working on every day, thanks to you? And I see a question, are any districts requiring students to complete work online that teachers are preparing, or is this optional? Again, that's a great question for your counties, and I would talk, if you have an instructional technology facilitator or curriculum instruction person that you have in contact with your school, definitely check in with them. I have not heard that there is not an expectation that for students not to do anything. They are expecting students to still continue their work with you. I have not heard anything contrary to that. So if anyone has anything to share along those lines, please feel free to. So I see like a lot in the comments right here. They're really state to state. The expectations are being reviewed and how they're moving forward. So we're in week 2, and it's a time for lots and lots of questions, and we're not sure. But what we definitely know is that your kids, they miss you, and their parents need your help too in supporting their kids and their learning. And we hope that, maybe our goal here in sharing some of these models with you are to kind of help you see that keeping it simple will be helpful. You can still do just as much in these distant learning sessions with your kids that hopefully you could do, if we were in our normal classrooms, we could still make those connections. So looking at our time and what we have left to go, we do want to kind of talk very briefly about keeping connected with our students. We've had a lot of questions in our feedback last time in and around how to help students view videos. And this comes right out of Kristen Zemke's YouTube video that we shared the link to, and we'll pop that right back in on the chat as well. She gives her students an active viewing protocol. She really wants them to be prepared when they are viewing content. And if you're trying to get all of this, write it down, no worries. We will put it in the chat so that you can go ahead and grab it. I'll do that right here. And then likewise, if you are still like very much required to have like some paper, and you're sending those documents home with packets home with students. There are ways that you can insert your videos in those, and these are just a couple of examples of using QR codes of how do you add your videos onto those worksheets or support your student learning even when you're not there. So in this example, I've grabbed a few math examples, but the students solve the problem. They could scan the code to see a video of you talking them through how to do it, and then they can kind of assess their learning from there. And I always get the question, what if they just watch the video and they don't really solve the problem first? Well, that's kind of it's accountability issue with the student. It's really that video and support is to help them. I've even seen teachers make the video on the worksheet, like here's an example of how to do a problem, but not the problems that you will be working on the sheet. And yes, I see in the chat the recording of this Zoom will be available to share within an hour after our session today. And I just added this picture to our slide. This is do-it-yourself document camera that Laura Martak posted on Twitter yesterday. Her cell phone and some soup cans. Instant document camera. So, we got to make it work the best that we can. And considering how videos can kind of help our kids when we're not there. And then we also had a lot of questions about Flipgrid.
And Flipgrid, a lot of you had mentioned that were happy that you tried it this week or last week, and we're excited about it. So Flipgrid, as you may or may not know, is the free online interactive video tool. And so there's all sorts of things going around about how teachers are utilizing Flipgrid to stay connected with their students. So these are some ideas that Jackie and I thought of that maybe you have thought of, or maybe are some new ideas, but can keep kids engaged, and you can still feel the connection between them. They'll see your face, they'll see each other's faces. It's one of those things kids can go on and respond when they're available. They don't have to be live sitting there during the Zoom session. So they can comment back and forth to each other. They can add stickers and emojis and make little cute videos. I've seen pre-Ks use Flipgrid. It's very easy to use. So all sorts of fun little ideas for as simple as a themed show and tell. This can be something from home. If you want to make it a fun, like this is the first time we've ever used Flipgrid, show us something that you're really proud of in your home or something like that. Or it can be a show and tell that they're demonstrating the work or the learning that they have just completed. The cute little talent shows, that's been going around Twitter too. Maybe a how-to. Teach us how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Anything kind of outside of the box, being creative here, but that idea, I know that some folks were talking about in the chat of, how do we know that students are actually going to do this work? How can I ensure that the learning is happening? This is just kind of a fun, interactive way to do that. It also helps to foster that collaboration and that face-to-face interaction that the kids are missing. So I'm happy that some of you have already started to use that. Maybe drop some other ideas in the chat too if you've used Flipgrid already or some things that you're thinking about. We are running a little short on time.
So Flipgrid, you may be seeing it all over social media. We're seeing used in lots of different ways. And in the chat, we've had people asking, using different platforms, and can you see each other? And can you see each other, in those spaces? And at least in Flipgrid, I've seen it used really well asynchronously, where students can kind of post and share. And I'm seeing lots of different ideas in our chat. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make a transcript of that chat as well. I've also been asked to make a copy of this slide deck, so we will force a copy and put that in the chat as well. So considering our time, that remains in the next few minutes, and this was a really good conversation. And I think we probably tried to give you all too much today, because we really want to try to be as supportive as possible. So our goal, we stay connected with all the questions that we have right now. Staying connected to your students, to the parents that you're supporting. You can hear my little guy in the background, I'm sure. That's really what's needed right now, is that connection, and all the other questions hopefully will be answered, or answered better soon. But in the meantime, keeping it simple, keeping it focused, and making sure that not only are you taking care of your kids, but that you're taking care of yourself. So we want to highlight, we've had a lot of questions about self-care, and dropping in the chat right now a link to a self-care app. I shared it last time in the chat, but I didn't get a chance to really talk about it. It's called Stop, Breathe, and Think, and here it is. And it is for teachers, completely free, and it allows you to take a break, take a look at how you're mentally feeling, how you're physically feeling, and it gives you some exercises. On that link as well, it has resources for students and not just teachers, so you can pass that along to parents as well. So does anyone know how to schedule a future meeting in Google Meets? If you can give Patty a hand there in the chat. I'm not very familiar with Google Meets, but or Google Meet, and if you can share her, and if Patty, if you don't get that question answered, we can look for that for you as well. So
the easiest way that I utilize, I think, just setting it up through, if you utilize your Google Calendar, it's pretty easy to set up the meeting within the Google Calendar. That may be a quick, easy solution. Mm-hmm. That's, I guess, just how I do it. Other folks may have other ideas of how you schedule future meetings, though.
We also want to, before you go, as we're getting down to our last few moments, we do have a feedback form. We would really love for you to tell us, what do you need? How can we support you? What can we do to make this just a little bit easier for you all? And ultimately, we want to be sure that we can support you. So in that self-care situation we did have pop up a moment ago, we are doing a slow chat. A slow chat is just some tips and questions and challenges on Twitter with our hashtag FIConnects. Next week, all you do is you kind of pop in, and whenever you have the time to do it, you can participate. So slow chat is not something that's synchronous. It's not happening within a certain timeline, just all of next week. So we want to encourage that. Really think about how you're taking care of yourself. But please, please, please give us some feedback on our link here, and let us know how we can continue to support you. Completing that form as well also will auto-generate for you a certificate for your time with us for this hour. We know a lot of teachers have been asked to show proof of what they're doing during this time. So that bit.ly /FIConnects will take you to a very short survey, and upon completion you'll get a link that will take you to that certificate. We are going to stay online, of course, to make sure that if you have any other questions or if you have any trouble with that feedback form in your certificate, we're here to help you. And we also want to say we have added Tuesdays to our FI Connects. On Tuesdays, we're talking to elementary principals in one group, secondary principals in another group, and also coaches and ITFs. So if this is something you can pass along for these support discussions, we're doing those on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. And we also hope that you will come and join us again next week based on your feedback and what you're giving us. Right now, what we'll be pulling together and supporting you with next week in conversations. So again, we did say that we are recording this. We will have this info on our YouTube page. So give us about an hour and we'll get that up. You'll notice if you rewatch this particular one, it's going to look a little bit different because of a recording technical issue. But we'll have that for you. We're also going to have a transcript of the chat. And so, again, if you need to reach out to Laura or myself, our contact information, we really do hope that we can support and help you. And with all that being said, please, please, please give us some feedback. Let us know how we can support and help you. And we do hope that you have a great day. And again, thank you for all that you do for children, all that you're doing right now. We know it is not easy time, but we're very thankful for you. We're here to support you, and please let us know in any way, shape, or form that we can. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.